The digital transition. The Digital Transition, a podcast series created to assist those tasked with implementing digital strategies, where we will share our knowledge and experiences to support you in your transition. Welcome to the Digital Transition, podcast number 12. I'm your host, Nathan Hildebrandt, and today I'm chatting with Cristina Savian about digital twins. Although digital twins are not the starting point for most asset owners, the technology may be the key factor for some to begin their digital journey. We'll discuss what a digital twin is and why it could benefit asset owners and how the technology works. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today, Cristina.
Thank you for having me, Nathan.
Now, firstly, Cristina, for those that are not aware of who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm Cristina Savian. I'm a technologist and construction industry professional. I've been in the industry for just about over 20 years. Probably understand my accent. I'm originally from Italy. I started my career in civil engineering back in 1998. Started working in my town, working on the redesign on big civil infrastructure here in the region. Then I moved to work for traffic engineering, working for the preparation of the 2006 during Winter Olympic Games during my hometown. And then in London, I moved to London in late 2005. There I started working in Royal Borough of Greenwich in southeast London and worked in many traffic departments and control parking zones. And then in 2012, I moved and started working for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. That's where I gained a lot of operational experience as a transport manager for the Greenwich Park Olympic venue. And I was looking after lots of traffic and parking management and planning for the venue, hosting the equestrian games there. But I always been a technologist and gained my fame as a digital leader when I was working there in Greenwich. Soon after that, Autodesk discovered my digital skills and they headhunted me and I started working for them in early 2013. Worked there for 5 years, worked as a technical pre-sales, then I moved to driving digital transformation, supporting large engineering firms, multinational firms. And then I decided to combine my industry experience as well as my academic, professional qualifications. While working, again, quite a few degrees in engineering, technology, in economics. And lastly was my MBA. Then after that, I decided to leave my corporate life and set up my own consultancy firm. I'm London-based. I work with a lot of startups and small SMEs, and I help them to scale up and bring new technology into the construction market. But then lately, I also started working with a lot of the large firms, and that's where I start focusing on this new technology, digital twinning technology, and the opportunities that now this brings the construction market.
So you've gone from one complex problem, so solving London's traffic issues during the Olympics, and moved on to a new challenge of seeing what one can do by connecting a physical asset to a digital asset. Now, can you explain a little bit about what your company Bewise does?
Yeah. So I started Bewise, a business environment type firm, offering consultancy services to, as I say, startups and small and mid businesses. And I really help them to scale up and bring this new, much needed technology into the construction market. So I help them to set up a strategy, do the product launch, lots of technical pre-sales and business development activities, and really help them to bring this new groundbreaking technology into a very difficult market, which is now there's so many tools and technologies and innovations out there, but it's always very difficult to not technology fits all purposes, and is all about understanding what is the right technology at the right moment, given the situation. So I suppose, and I use all my 20-year experience in the field to help them and help this way the construction industry.
Now, it's pretty controversial having a conversation about digital twins, and I think the reason why I specifically wanted to have this chat with you about digital twins is because of the substantial amount of marketing that's out there by software vendors, and not only software vendors, but let's call them slightly misinformed people from industry and their views on what a digital twin is. And I think that, there's a lot more to it than what they're just talking about. And it's similar to the approach that a lot of people were misinformed about BIM in the past. Many people suggest that it's just a simple digital replica of a physical built asset. Now, that ain't the case. Can you kind of share with our listeners what a digital twin really is?
In terms of what the definition of the digital twin, I can certainly say now that I've been researching this topic essentially for the last 6 months, and I'm also one of I sit on the built environment panel at the Institute of Engineering Technology here in London, and we are one of the authors of this digital twin publication. So that's when I started really researching this topic, and I also realized how controversial it is. And also, you're right, there is a lot of noise coming from different parts, and it's not necessarily just software vendors, but it comes from a lot of different, really people. They are trying to understand what, it is. And yes, it's probably like it was, what you mentioned, is exactly what it was, 10 years ago with BIM. Is the new industry buzzword. And probably mistakenly, a lot of people just say, oh, yeah, it's just a new BIM and so on. And it's not exactly, what it is. And probably one of the things that I realize is a lot of people don't understand that actually the concept is not new. It's not something that we developed as construction industry professionals. It's not something coming from the construction industry at all. It's a concept that was it's actually been around since the 1670s. So, and it was all about mirroring the systems and trying to help engineers solve complex problems. In terms of the digital twin concept as it stands right now, it was first defined in 2003, and it comes from the manufacturing world. So we can already see the difference that the manufacturing industry has actually been using and implementing digital technology for quite some time. And as it happens with many technologies now, as construction professionals, we are implementing and talking about adopting the benefits of implementing digital twin technology. So where does it come? Well, obviously I'm based in the UK, and for us probably is the first document where we start seeing definition applied data for public good report published by the National Infrastructure Commission here in the UK back in 2017. And in terms of definition, they actually define it as dynamic representation of a system which limits the real world behavior. They define it as the virtual representation of physical objects across its life cycle using real-time data, which enables understanding, learning, and reasoning. There is quite a few definitions that I can mention, a few definitions that now has been developed in the last few months. We can talk about the Gemini Principles in a second, but we can already see how the original definition was just talking about digital replica of a physical asset, which is connected by the real time, is now, which was, what was initially defined by Dr. Michael Grigg in 2003. You can see how now we're kind of coming out with our own definitions. So we can see few definitions out there. I wouldn't say I think they all agree on the connection to the physical asset through real-time connection. And then what all of them mention is slightly different takes. I think it depends also on the implementation and the purpose or why you want to implement digital twin technology. So just to make it, simple and clarify the concept, the digital twin is just not a digital replica. Yeah, it's not just the digital representation on its own, but it's the digital representation which is connected to the counterpart of physical part through the use of sensors and real-time connections. So that is really the difference. The sensors are the key difference between a digital twin and just a simple digital replica.
So it's kind of fitting. I didn't think about this until now that we're actually recording this interview on the day of the Apollo 11 moon landing. Kind of ironic, but the fact that NASA actually created this concept so long ago. But the challenges I guess we face is that some clients might be also confused about the concepts of having a digital model connected to their FM system and understanding that isn't a digital twin, but it's just purely a CAFM system, and it's actually not live data feeding back, but it's actually more to it than that. Now, one thing you did touch on briefly, and I think this is actually a really good document for people to read if they actually want to raise their awareness about what digital twins are. So the Centre for Digital Built Britain, they recently released a document titled Gemini Principles. Now, for the lazy people out there that don't have the time to read or don't want to click on a link to download it and have a read, it's not that long a document though, but can you explain firstly, I guess at the high level, what the principles in this document is about?
As I mentioned before, I mentioned the data for public good report. The digital twin for the UK infrastructure was a response to that report published by the National Infrastructure Commission. The data for public good report is a very, very useful document that you can download online. Yes, it's a bit longer actually. Through recommendation of the National Infrastructure Commission, the government new digital framework task group published the Gemini Principles, through the Centre of Digital Built Britain, based in Cambridge.
Yep.
And the Gemini Principle, which is actually a very, very short document. It's a lot of images and a lot of clear images to explain very briefly what the principles are. And so the Gemini Principle provides the sector with the foundational definitions and values to guide the development of the national digital twin. So we're talking about UK national digital twin, which is an ecosystem of digital twins. They are connected by securely shared data. What I found interesting, I think, on the Gemini Principle is the fact it actually states the benefits, which obviously, comes from the data of for public good report. But it does state that greater data sharing to release an additional £7 billion per year of benefit across the UK infrastructure sector.
Just a small amount.
Which is equivalent to 25% of the total infrastructure spent. So this is, I think, is interesting. It's the interesting part is, and that's the reason why, as I mentioned, to start reading the National Infrastructure Commission report first, and then you probably understand a bit better where the Gemini Principle comes from. But here the question is not do we need to build or not to build a digital twin is getting to the next level is there are benefits on implementing digital twin technology because we can already see this from the other industries, and we actually need to take to the next level and connect these digital twins together to create a national digital twin, because this will bring a long list of benefits to the UK economy.
Now, you've almost, I had lined up another question to ask you, but in regards to why would asset owners want their built asset connected to their virtual asset? And you kind of almost answered me in the sense that you're saying, well, you know what, we're going to have a digital built Britain. It's all fully connected and it's going to save industry $7 billion. Is there any other reason why you could think of, apart from that amazing value add that digital twins are going to add to the economy?
Well, if you're talking obviously about infrastructure, there is, we need to understand we are building, the economy, is growing. We need to do more with what we have. We are aware of the growing population, increasing demand. We need more housing. We need more infrastructure. So there is a lot that needs to be built in the world, and of course, for this takes into consideration for in the next 2 years. So we have to do better with what we have, and profit margin, not only because we're globally are very, very low. So we need to implement ready available, the technology to do better with what we have. This is literally the same of what, taking the evolution of what is now, available and implementing, the latest technology to the built environment. So if we are talking about, benefits, you can find a lot of different reports, not necessarily from, the construction industry, because, as we know, we just started talking about it, and we're talking about piloting, pilot projects right now. So we still probably, and then the Data for Public Good report does talk obviously about, these new pilots to be developed this year to justify, all of these, benefits. But if we want to take about, the benefits from how the other industries, seen the benefits and already realize the benefits in implementing digital twin technology, we can see that the ability to have a virtual replica which is connected to the physical asset in real time allows to, predict behavior, to always have control over the operating costs, increase the, overall productivity. We can perform, we can do performance improvements. We know how our asset is operating in real time, anytime, and we can make decisions and insights and make decisions accordingly to how the asset, is performing. As a construction professional, we design and as built assets, building infrastructure, but the life cycles are so long that not necessarily is, perhaps performing the same way how we designed it, because there's, there are lots of different aspects that, comes into that. So it's very, very important to have real insights on how, not how it's supposed to operate. So have just, let's talk about the operation and maintenance, where the operation and maintenance phases are based on experience, on what was designed, when they're supposed to, their expected lifespan. But what about if actually we intervene only when it's necessary? Why, for everyone who works in the facility and operation and maintenance phase, how many times we actually perform maintenance where actually was not perhaps needed? It was just because it was a routine maintenance and because that is what we always done it. But what about is we actually align the operation and maintenance phase to actually on how the asset is operating, right now. We talk about prediction, and probably is also what started driving me and start working and learning more about digital twin technology. How many of our assets and maintenance of their assets are actually miscalculated? Here in Italy, in my not too far away from my hometown, unfortunately, we witnessed the collapse of the Morandi Bridge just over a year ago. And we ask ourselves, and certainly as a construction professional driving digital transformation in industry, I ask myself, how can we can we let this happen? How is it possible? How can we have miscalculated so much the maintenance routine of the bridge to allow this to happen, so suddenly? Yes, we certainly worked and used the best technology and knowledge and, engineering knowledge to design our big assets, but not necessarily then we operate them how we should. And we can certainly see now examples on where there was huge miscalculation.
Now, that was a really detailed why. Now, it took me by surprise, to be honest with you. And this could be a trick question for you, but depending on how the world works over in the UK and in Italy. But how does one connect their built asset to communicate with their virtual asset?
We now have sensors, okay? We now have the ability to sensors that can be linked, to attach to a physical asset and can talk, and communicate, through wireless and IoT devices to our systems. Yeah. We didn't have this before. So in the same way how we now, talk to Alexa, we can receive the type of information, from our assets. If we implement this already, for example, in the, a small example, I gave you, sensors on the bridge would have predicted that if there was, collapse. Yeah. If we had equipped the bridge with sensors, we should have seen that before. We should have. It's very difficult not to once you have real time, insights to miscalculate, something. You see that something is happening, and of course you can't be 24/7 and monitor certain assets all the time. But that was probably a clear example where probably because I work in in the digital transformation, but trust me, that day my heart sunk, and it could have been one of my members, my family members. I went on that bridge so many times in my childhood, and it was called like Brooklyn Bridge for us. And we were just like, how is it? It's not possible. There were sensors. I'm sure there were sensors, and because that's how I see it. But the reality is, no, we haven't equipped all our infrastructure, and to be honest, because it was not predicted to do that, also add the extra costs to maintenance. So obviously we also need to be able to manage that. But you can immediately see that there are a level of risk in certain assets that could justify the fact that we need to start installing the sensors and start understanding how some of the infrastructure and perform, because they will allow us to predict better our maintenance and predict disasters like what unfortunately has happened.
That's probably a very drastic example that you've given us. And in the last podcast, I interviewed Chris Linning and talked to him about this in the Opera House and the methodologies of which they would allocate data to certain systems. And one of the things he talked about was if a air conditioning system was to fail one evening or at any time throughout the day, specifically, that could actually stop the ability for a performance to take place. Now, imagine the Sydney Opera House or all these assets had connections so that a computer could pick up certain differences in the performance of a system to then notify the facility managers that that this system's not performing in the similar routine or similar signals that's supposed to be sending, and they could then prevent that from occurring and essentially causing substantial cost or loss an asset owner. Now, I guess, we've talked about bridges falling down, which isn't that good, and, simple air conditioning systems, but there's obviously lots of other benefits that clients could receive from doing it. I guess we could talk for 100 years about them, which we're not going to do today. But I guess the biggest challenge we might face here in Australia is in regards to our internet connection speed and our NBN that isn't as good as it is. But we might see that overcome by a wireless 5G network that gets rolled out across the country, which actually makes the NBN redundant. But that's something that's obviously going to be, we don't want to touch on the Internet of Things, the IoT, because that would also mean another series of acronyms and discussions that go on for an hour. Obviously, we've just covered a couple of topics as to reasons why asset owners would want to have a digital twin. Without going on about it for too long, is there any others that you could probably talk about off the top of your head that might be important to cover as part of this discussion?
Implementing digital twinning technology might not be feasible for the lack of infrastructure. In that case, just said probably the connectivity in Australia would never be that good. But so I think we need to see, and actually interesting you ask this question because 2 days ago I was talking to Simon Evans, one of the digital director of Atkins. It was actually interesting to see his work that he's been doing, which not necessarily talk about digital twin, just, it's the ultimate vision. It's a journey. We will have most likely a level of, a different level, be like what we had during, for the BIM process. The digital twin ultimately the digital twin requires a journey and a level of maturity, to get there. Yep. And yes, certain levels, certain elements will be very difficult to track because then ultimately you're not going to be able to connect 100%, every part, a building to this digital replica because ultimately the connectivity is not there. I think it's we need to see how do you achieve the digital twin. And the reality is if we start taking and managing the data, all this digital data that is being built, it is being created and being created along the entire life cycle from conceptual design to design and construction so on, and we bring this information, we structure this data, we bring this information, we actually know how it was designed, how it's supposed to perform, and we bring all this very, very important useful information, and we structure it in a way that the operation and maintenance people can use and can use it in a meaningful way. They can understand how they can the assets supposed to perform, understand the difference. And unfortunately, I think what is happening right now is, as we know, we don't, we create this huge amount of data. We create these very, very pretty 3D models, but don't necessarily we link all this information together. And even when we did our best to create, that very, very useful model, it's not necessarily useful to the operation and maintenance phase because the professionals who work in that side, they're not actually receiving the information in the way they want to receive it, the way is meaningful to them. We need to see the digital twin as a journey. It requires different stages to achieve because we are talking about these assets that are going to be around for a very, very long time. And of course, they need to rely on connectivity. Perhaps some areas we will never achieve that. But that shouldn't stop us from achieving the level before that, which is having a digital, which in this case is a digital replica, which is not live, perhaps not going to be able to connect in real time, but still can give us an understanding how the asset is performing and is able to give us insight on how we should, make decisions accordingly. We talked earlier about, definitions and so on. So the way I like to describe digital twin is a bit of a storyteller, with the inherited understanding of the way the built asset has been designed, constructed, and the capability of all the materials and constraints as they interact with each other. Yeah? Even if we achieve to that level, even if for ultimately, because we are talking about the lifespan, life cycle, and we're not gonna be able to ultimately turn them into living assets, still achieving the next, the level of Earth just before the connection, still it will make it very, very useful for us to make decisions.
Now, you touched on the fact that the digital twin implementation should be a stage one. Specifically here in Australia, the biggest issues really are around trying to implement BIM right now, and implementing BIM not just at a client level but also at an industry level is actually quite a challenge. I kind of think that the biggest challenge that anyone would face in trying to implement a digital twin strategy would actually be capability of industry. And as I talked about just before, internet connectivity. Are there any other major challenges that you think that inhibit? Because obviously you said, it should be stepped, and it should be stepped obviously to align with a few different things. What in particular do you think would be another challenge, or other challenges that are important to be wary of?
There are already a lot of challenges in implementing, BIM, the BIM information modeling process. The reality the way I see it is you're not going to be able to achieve a digital twin unless you follow the BIM process. The only way to achieve the digital twin is to start to implement the information process, properly. The challenges of implementing a digital twin are the same as in implementing the building information process. So if we are talking about additional, challenges, probably the main one is data security, because in the moment you start connecting digital, twins with assets together, how you securely give access, to that and to the access, I think it's the main, it's going to be the main challenge in implementing digital twin technology. Start thinking about, think about the consequences of having access to the digital twin of, a road and infrastructure, and think about the risk of having access, or someone, the wrong person having access to the national digital twin of the UK infrastructure. So, in the moment we even get to agreed national twin, so start connecting digital twins together and creating, our smart cities, there we can see obviously the risk of someone getting access to the information, the ability to obviously using for the wrong purpose.
It becomes a Hollywood movie then, doesn't it?
It does, but then at the same time, because the reality is, what are the consequences of not doing, on not actually attempting to implement, it shouldn't be a reason not to implement digital technology. It shouldn't be a reason not to implement a new technology, because the same way how we now secure access to, bank information, and we now trust to just do banking through an app, we should try, we should accept that that's the direction where we are going in our everyday life. And yes, our building and infrastructure most likely will start monitoring these assets and managing these assets in the same way, and we will find a way to secure this data.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely the data security, certainly I would say I can see as being one of the main challenges. And then obviously we have the same challenges of the BIM process, which underlines, the creation of this digital replica. So, common language, interoperability. We have this, problem of legal systems on how we commission our built assets, which there is, the industry practice, as I say, that, the lack of understanding of the BIM process, and the fact that we can now, a lot more interdisciplinary collaboration, the fact that, we are not used to, in the early days, to start talking to facility managers. Why should we? Yeah, why, we're not talking to them. Why? And the reality is sometimes also the challenge of that contract might get signed in a few years' time. So we don't actually know who is going to be ultimately operated. So you can certainly see some aspects of, some challenges that, we need to overcome. And I guess it's like any type of, evolution in every industry. We will find a way.
Now, I guess one final question, and I think this is probably a good one to kind of end on before I end with my proper question that I give to everyone. But the challenges we're going to face in the coming years might be similar to what we've experienced in the past with regards to clients just saying, I'd like BIM, please. We're going to potentially see clients saying, I'd like a digital twin, please. The challenges are probably going to be even more, or the uses or the purposes of a digital twin will probably be significantly more than that of BIM. From your perspective, do you think that it's going to be an easy process, or hopefully, or do you really think that hopefully clients are going to be more informed by the time they're starting to ask for digital twins to actually, have a business case behind what information they want?
Probably what happened in the last, years, where I know because I work for a software vendor, and where you get a phone call and say, I want to BIM, I want to provide BIM, and without really understanding on, what it is and what's the purpose. I'm not surprised if we are going to start hearing, clients say, I want a digital twin. I think it's more the understanding is educating. It's about education. It's about educating the asset owner that things have changed, have moved on. There are new technology and new processes that can be put into place that can ultimately bring a lot of benefits. We need to educate the asset owner that we can use the latest available technology to develop a digital replica, which in some aspects can be linked to our physical assets that will ultimately give us a lot of benefits and understanding on how the asset is operating. So we need to understand the purpose. We need to understand what exactly can we afford and can we, it's feasible to link, because there's no way I think we can link every single part of the building. So we need to understand what the parts are justifiable and what ultimately will bring, the ultimate benefit. And if you see the digital twin as a replica and as a system, not necessarily just, your 3D model, but just don't see it as a 3D model, but see it as a series of information, structured information that gives you the ability to search, understand how the asset is, currently performing, and what type of information do you want, and focus on what are the most important aspects, rather than just say, I want a digital twin, so I want every single aspect of my physical asset being replicated and talk to my digital twin. I think it's going to be probably some decisions need to be made on which part are ultimately going to bring the benefit. So, and understand the purpose is why you building the digital twin and which are the aspects that you want to monitor.
And it's similar to that as to the reasons why you want certain information with regards to BIM as well. So that seems to be the message that everyone I talk to raises, and it's something that hopefully our listeners that are in a position where they're having to specify or make these decisions are better informed. Cristina, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today to discuss digital twins and for clarifying a number of these myths that the market has put out there. So I have one final question, one that I've been asking all of my guests, and today it's not going to change. It's not going to be what does digital twins mean to you, but what does BIM mean to you?
BIM is the process that allows us to structure information in a way that matters. At the moment, we create so much data that is not structured, so much data that can be reused, so much data that will save time and effort in understanding how, we design and build this, our house environment. And BIM is a process like many, other processes. It brings a lot of benefits. We know the benefits. We need to learn that there are, like any new process, there is There are challenges, and we should embrace the challenges rather than just keep saying, "Oh, we always done this way, and why should we start doing things, in a different way?" I think we are, as an industry, we're at a turning point. It's digital transformation is happening. It's not driven by politicians, and it's driven by people. It's driven by all of us. We can implement digital processes into the built environment too, and there's no reason not to. To answer your question it's the process that we should all follow, but it's more the meaning of the process rather than, the steps and why we're doing this. It has an end. It has a very important meaning at the end, and we should, think about that before we even start doing any task.
Thanks once again, Cristina, for your time. So for more information on Cristina and digital twins, please head to our website and find the links to the various documents that we discussed today for further reading. I look forward to sharing our next podcast in a fortnight's time. Until then, good luck with your digital transition. For more information, or if you'd like to continue the discussion in the comments section, head over to our website, thedigitaltransition.com. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on our future podcasts. Digital transition.